Welcome to this episode of CP Conversations. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Christine Astarita, a physical therapist and the founder of Breakthrough Intensive PT, Long Island's intensive therapy center, which helps people with neurological diagnoses while focusing on the whole family. Christine is also the author of Breaking Through Special Needs, which was ranked number 1 on Amazon. And she's the podcast host for Breaking Through Special Needs. She'll also be a presenter at the 6th annual virtual Cerebral Palsy conference coming up on October 1st and 2nd. Welcome, Christine. It's so great to see you. It's been a long time.
It has. It's so nice to see you too.
Thank you. So in the beginning of your career, you wanted to be a sports therapist for the New York Giants. Now, most of my family is from Boston, so I won't hold that against you. But what inspired you to make the switch to becoming a pediatric therapist?
Yeah, it's so weird, right? How life leads you in different directions. But I originally thought I was going to be a sports therapist, always involved in sports. And you do different clinical rotations when you're in PT school. And I had the opportunity. I always loved kids, so they placed me at a special needs school in Cape May, New Jersey. And it was from preschool all the way up to age 21 in high school. And these kids, when I tell you they changed my life, it was the moment that I knew that this population was who I was meant to serve. And, I was able to be myself with these kids and really found my passion for wanting to help this community.
That's such a great story. Do you have any particular patient that stands out from that time for you?
Yeah, so there were 2 clients in that rotation that really changed my life. One was a little bit younger and one was a little bit older. But even into my first jobs and when I was working in the pediatric field, ever since I graduated, there was a young girl who she was diagnosed with hemiplegic CP, and she was learning how to walk. And every time we were trying to work with her, she was just screaming and screaming. And it was just so tough, but you have to work through those things. And mom,
because she was in pain. Is that why she
was? It was just so hard.
Hard.
Everything that you had to force her to do was just so challenging for her. And she was only 2, so it was super hard.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we had the opportunity to work with her over a period of time. And I will never forget, mom was like, oh, she started taking, some steps at home. And I was like, well, let's see it. And that day, she held 2 little drumsticks in her hands, and she took 14 steps by herself. Yeah. And that day stands out and has changed my life and secured that, there's no other place for me.
Yeah. And that just goes to show you that you really never know where you're going to end up in life. Sometimes we can have all these plans and that there's nothing wrong with that, having goals and plans, but sometimes life has literally other plans for you, as it did for you. Mm-hmm. Now, tell us about who you serve in your clinic and what types of programs you offer. Now, I know that you opened your clinic in 2017, right?
Yeah. So we opened in 2017. We started as a sole intensive physical therapy facility where we utilize something called the TheraSuit method, which we utilize these crazy looking cages and that can kind of look a little intimidating.
I want to try it.
Listen, you're invited anytime to the clinic, so we could set that up.
Thank you.
And the TheraSuit, and it started solely as that, but we help anybody with a neurological diagnosis, kids, adults, to really help them improve their mobility, improve their confidence, and ultimately improve the quality of their lives through these programs. So we started, like I said, as an intensive physical therapy facility. And then we slowly, as we gained more.
What does that mean? Let me interrupt you, because I know there's different types of therapy. So when you say intensive, how is that different from something that might not be as intensive?
Sure. Well, typically these families will go to home and school therapies, meaning Treatment time is limited to 30-minute treatment sessions. Our treatment sessions are minimum of 1 hour to really ideally focus.
That's a big
I'm sure, as
difference.
you know, being in physical therapy for time, anybody with a neurological diagnosis really needs the functional repetition to be able to achieve new goals. And unfortunately, the systems that we currently have in place don't allow for that. And so when you're in school therapies for 30 minutes twice a week, it's really hard to make meaningful progress with limited resources. So intensive therapy just means we kind of take a different approach, not only through the different types of equipment that we utilize, but also in length of treatment time. We have intensive programs that are 3-week programs. So we have people that travel to us from all over the US, which is really cool, to do 3-week programs.
Cool.
And that program is 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks. So
okay. Yeah. So
it's intense.
yeah, and it's more targeted. And I also wanted to say that from when I talked to you, you told me that you spend an extraordinary amount of time getting to know your clients, especially in their initial visit. And because of this, they're like family to you and vice versa. How do you foster that environment in your clinic? Because that is something that I feel sets you apart from other therapy, practices.
Yeah, 100%. The whole family approach is essential to breakthrough. We really want to make sure that we're the right fit for any of our families, because I think that sometimes it's not the right fit. And I think that really making sure that you develop these connections with our families, making sure you understand what their goals are for their child or for themselves if they're the individual, but really making sure that you dial that in, because if they're going to be seeking our care, we have to make sure that it's a team and it's a collaborative approach. And these families are from whether something happened at birth or whether a diagnosis was later on, they're used to going to doctors, a million different doctors, and they're just constantly being told limitations of their children. They're constantly being told.
I like to call it doom and gloom.
Yeah, I mean, that's appropriate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, we hear horror stories of, like, you think that they would be making up these stories, and parents will say, no, that, the doctor told us that they're never going to talk, or they're never going to walk, or they're never going to be capable of feeding themselves or anything. And I really wanted it to be a place where they come in and they feel like family and they feel comfortable, because if they're going to be committing to coming like regularly or to a program, they're going to get the most out of the program, and their child or themselves are going to make the most gains if they feel comfortable in that environment. And so we make sure to take a whole family approach too, in the way that we like to ask questions about how it's going to affect the whole family, that the child or the individual with a disability isn't the only one who is being affected by our care. And so whatever goals that they have, like, wow, one day you want your child to walk, like, how cool is that going to be when they get to play with their brother or sister, or you get to take them out to dinner if they can sit by themselves, or
right.
And we like to take it big picture, because we find so much fulfillment in what we do. And so we want to make it as close of a connection as possible. So we like to take the intake process slowly so that we can really get to know our families before we take them on as clients.
That's really special, because I know that you told me that you're out of network for insurance purposes, and that's why you can spend all this time, because most doctors, they just don't have the time to do that. Now, they also don't have your heart either. So, obviously there are good doctors and good therapists out there, but who believe in similar things such as you, but they just don't have the time. And you were mentioning this, which was also something I wanted to find out more about, is your well-rounded approach to the family. And I know that you have sibling and parent education support workshops. Tell us about those and why you feel they're so important.
Yeah, sure. So when I was working in home care previous to opening Breakthrough, you're going into these homes, so you're really getting to see the dynamics of what's going on in the home and the relationships between parents, siblings, sibling to sibling. And, there was a definite need. And I spoke with one of the parents, and luckily she's still under our care to this day, but she had introduced me to sibling support and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so needed. And eventually we did, once Breakthrough opened, brought it to Breakthrough. So we offer sib shops, which is more nationally known, but we also have taken our own little approach, and we offer it from kids ages 5 all the way up to 17 plus, for the siblings, because we really feel like they're the missing puzzle piece sometimes, and they're often forgotten about in care. And our parent workshops, we host like educational types of workshops for lifting and transfers and things to help them stay safe while
really
they're
practical advice and techniques and things that they can actually use. That's very important. It really is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Can you give us just an example of what's one thing that might happen in a sibling workshop?
Sure. They like to play a lot of fun games, but we also do, they've been held virtually. We just did our first in-person recently, back since COVID.
Okay.
So we're probably going to do some sort of hybrid model now. But we do discussion types of activities also, where they're always welcome to kind of have a discussion, where they get to kind of explain or discuss experiences that have happened to them, whether that be a frustrating circumstance, like they went out to dinner and their sibling was screaming, and that was really embarrassing for them. And then they get the opportunity for another sibling who's sitting next to them to say, yeah, that happened to me too once. Whereas their typical friendships and relationships within school, they don't get that. Their friends don't know.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it parallels the parent experience. So the parent also can sometimes feel like they're alone in this.
Absolutely.
And so we want to provide those connections between families so that they feel like they have the support that they need.
Yeah, what you're doing is really special. And I know that your main goal is to provide resources, as we're talking about, and support for the disability community at large. What's lacking, and how are you bridging the gap?
Yeah, I think honestly, like no awareness of any sort of alternative things that they have. So, intensive therapy is out there for families, but people don't know about it. Or
they don't know, really? They don't know about it? Like, it's not, I guess I'm just, because I'm old, I'm like 48. I didn't, but I guess I figured like, maybe it's like more, it's talked about more now, but in your experience, people still, they just don't know that it's available?
I mean, more parents are definitely finding out more with the help of social media and people like expanding that type of way. But, different types of things like support and other types of what's in their local community that they can seek, or other things like that. I really want Breakthrough to be a place in other locations as well. That's a community-based resource center for families, doctors that they can go see, alternative things that they can reach.
Right.
And obviously those connections, fostering those connections between families locally as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And what kind of feedback do you get from, the people that you work with?
I mean, they honestly, we've had our clients for a long time, right? Like once they're with Breakthrough, they kind of stick with us.
Like, give us an example, because when you say long time, you mean it. You're not talking like, 6 months. You're talking how long?
Yeah, I mean, some of our clients have followed since home care, but since we've had clients that have stayed since Breakthrough is open, so over 4 years.
Wow, that's a testament, right, to what you do and how well you do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so I think I interrupted you. Did you want to say anything about what kind of feedback you get from the people who, come and visit you, the families?
Yeah, I mean, our families, I think they really value that connection. And now that we've grown a little bit too, they get to see the same parents side by side. And so they get to connect and build those relationships.
Make friends. Yeah, because that's an issue. If you're a parent and you've got your head, straight ahead, you're trying to take care of your family, things can fall by the wayside. Let's be real about it, right? But with the kind of community that you're providing, like you said, it can be a one-stop shop where it feels like you're not alone in this.
Yeah. That's the ultimate goal. And like, I want them to come in and it be like hey, how was the weekend versus, hey, how was that neurology appointment? You know,
Big difference.
it's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it really is. And I heard you say that the best thing parents can do is find a therapist who will fight for their child. Tell all the parents out there why it's so important and also give them some advice. What if somebody's listening or watching right now? They don't like their child's therapist. What should they do?
First of all, communication is the top thing. And I think that a lot of younger parents struggle with that because they're navigating this space for the first time. But I would tell any parents that communication is key. If you're unhappy with maybe something that the therapist is doing or a doctor even is the way that they're approaching things, it's really important that you communicate what your goals are for your child. What are you seeing and what your perspective is on the situation, because they might be doing something that maybe you just don't understand, or maybe it is something that you do need a therapist switch, but it's really important that you communicate that with the care provider in every
Yeah.
way possible. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard. Sometimes, like school therapies, you get a little
You don't have
communication
a choice
or you
probably
don't
of who
have
you,
it.
yeah, or like who you, there's some instances where like if it's school and that's the only therapist they have, like you can't switch, but you can communicate with that person. And right. And yeah, that's important. Like in my own life, just as a person who has to go to a doctor for just general things, if I don't like a doctor, they're fired.
Yeah, you
No,
don't have
I never used to be like that, but I learned that wait a second, like if we're not on the same page about something, you're not the only doctor in the universe.
100%.
I can find somebody else who's more aligned, with me and or what I'm trying to do or figure out. So I think you share that same philosophy.
For sure. I mean, it's all based on values, right? Like you need to find somebody and that's going to be caring for your family that shares the same values that you do, that
Yeah.
shares the same perspective and goals for your child that you do. Because if you're stuck with someone who's negative or someone who maybe doesn't see the progress or see what they're capable of,
Right.
that definitely affects the quality of care.
Sure. And what you do is a lot of times it's a long term. Therapy is long term. So if a parents out there, if they're going to a place where there's no hope, they're not giving them any. I mean, every case is different. Everybody knows that. You understand that. But you people deserve to, like you said, see people who share the same values, or at least like, hey, like make it fun, try to make it, you know what I mean? It doesn't all have to be, oh my God, like we're going to therapy today, like, but it just depends. And I also wanted to let everybody know that you actually have a couple really cool things coming up. You have a marathon coming up shortly. But I know it's important because you're going to tell us what inspired it, because it's the disability community is involved in this thing.
Yes. So excited. I can't believe it's only a month away. So I'm running an 85-mile ultra run and so we're located here on Long Island. So the very southern tip of eastern tip of Long Island is Montaulk Lighthouse. So I'll be running from the Montaulk Lighthouse all the way in Breakthrough, and I will be wheeling our clients in an adaptive stroller for certain legs, as well as being joined by some people running in the community, some people having their adaptive trikes with me through
So even the marathon is a community event.
Of
You even
course,
made that a community event. It's all about community.
It's always about community, Nicole. You know this, right? And we're fundraising for a local nonprofit called Angela's House that helps the medically fragile population here on Long Island.
Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for doing that, and thank them. And I love that you picked a nonprofit that's local to your area. I think that's important. And that because a lot of these places, nobody knows about them because we hear about the quote unquote bigger places, but there's a lot of smaller places that are doing great work and they need help too. So thanks for that. Sure. And everybody listening, you are going to have the chance to hear Christine speak. She's going to be one of our presenters at the Cerebral Palsy Conference coming up the virtual Cerebral Palsy conference coming up on October 1st and 2nd. It's free, y'all. So after you watch this episode, go register. What I wanted to end with is give parents a glimpse of what are you going to be talking about and what are they going to be able to take away from your presentation.
Sure. So I will be talking a little bit more about alternative therapies and also helping parents understand about finding the right fit, kind of like we just spoke about, finding the right fit for your child's care, and what are the most important things to consider for that, so that obviously you can find your best quality of life for your family.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That's advice that a lot of parents are going to want to hear for sure. And do you have any last tips or words of wisdom to all these parents out there that they're some of them they just feel like they don't know what to do, or what do you say, like when somebody comes to your office and they're just overwhelmed? How do you deal with it?
I say, I understand that you feel overwhelmed and I totally get it. And there's every reason for you to feel overwhelmed, but let's take this one thing at a time. And communication and transparency is key. I think that a lot of parents struggle advocating or struggle changing things or whatever because you're navigating this space for the very first time. But it's important that you communicate what your goals are, what you see for your children, what you see for yourself if you're the individual with a disability, and communicate that with anybody providing care to you or anybody within the community close by to you, because again, it is all about community and the people that you surround yourself with. So if you ever need resources, Breakthrough, regardless, will help try to provide those.
And you do that on social media too. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. We're on Facebook at Breakthrough Intensive Physical Therapy, or Instagram, Breakthrough Intensive PT. And our website is breakthroughptli.com. And there's a whole list of free resources for parents. I can send a copy of my book for free as well to anybody that would like.
How nice of you. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course. It's resources. That's why I wrote it. It's a book of resources and stories for parents to know that they are not alone in this.
Yeah, well, you're just doing such great work, Dr. Christine.
Thank
and
you.
I know you're just going to crush that marathon, and I can't wait to hear all about that. I thank you so much for talking to me today and for really being an ally in our community. We love that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Oh, it was great.